The US has made separate agreements with Ukraine and Russia to ensure safe navigation in the Black Sea and to implement a ban on strikes against energy facilities. Moscow said its discussions with the US and Saudi Arabia focused mainly on a new ceasefire deal in the Black Sea and important export routes for Russia and for Ukraine. And Moscow said it required the guarantees from Washington that Ukraine would respect a maritime ceasefire. For its part, Kyiv said it had agreed to a ceasefire at sea and a halt on attacks on energy infrastructure. Let's unpack this with Jonas Driedger, who's from the Research Centre Transformations of Political Violence. He's an international relations expert with a focus on Russia and transatlantic security and defence policy. Welcome to DW. So we appear to have both sides agreeing separately to a ceasefire in the Black Sea, with Ukraine now calling for more talks to settle what it says are details of these separate agreements. Are you clear what has been agreed?
No, I'm not. And that is in part because we have already seen that in the preceding phone calls, where supposedly a deal was struck to deny attacks on energy infrastructure, that wasn't heeded, apparently by both parties. So I would be hesitant to say that this is a major breakthrough, but it certainly signifies that Russia on the one hand and the United States on the other are interested in these talks and that there is some progress being made.
So if we presume that there is consensus on a ceasefire in the Black Sea at least, what does each side get out of such a ceasefire?
Well, the Trump administration has made it quite clear that they want to cash in on one of their electoral promises, which is to make steps towards a ceasefire. And of course, part of the function of what we are seeing right now is to give the visualization of that. On the Russian side, of course, there's a perceived window of opportunity that if you can strike a deal with the Americans, that you can realize goals, interests towards Ukraine and the European Union. That's also how I understand the Russian rhetoric on the other side, that they are glad that the US is making Ukraine do certain things.
OK. And we have Russia saying that it needs guarantees from Washington that Ukraine would respect a maritime ceasefire. Is there any indication of how this ceasefire will be enforced?
I don't see an indication that there is a very systematic or transparent approach to all of this, and that is in part because the preceding announced agreement has been broken already, apparently. So, but on the other hand, there is, of course, a strong interest on the Ukrainian side to signal to the Americans that they are reliable and that they stick to certain agreements. But that, of course, can translate into Russian leverage, which, considering what is at stake overall, can be quite fatal or problematic in this overall picture.
Yeah, you mentioned in your first answer, I think, one of the problems with this, which is that Russia broke one of the agreements within hours of it having been struck. This was a ban on strikes against energy facilities and energy infrastructure. This has been re-agreed. And once more, is this just enforced by goodwill?
That is my reading of it. I mean, to the extent that it is enforced and being observed right now, it is being observed because of goodwill on either party's side. The problem is that we are facing what is basically a land war that is fought about political allegiance, about domestic governance, and about territory. So we are a far cry away from solving this overall conflict.
OK, thanks for talking us through that. Jonas Driedger from Transformations of Political Violence. Thank you so much.